Okay, let's dive straight in. We're swimming in information these days, aren't we?
Oh, absolutely. It feels like a constant flood.
Yeah, articles, videos, podcasts, all, you know, promising to make us better somehow.
hmm
But really, how much of that actually sticks?
That's the thing. How often does that spark of insight actually turn into like real action?
Exactly. We read something great, think, aha,
Yeah.
and then poof,
Yeah.
gone.
Right. And our sources talk about this idea of becoming information hoarders. We collect and collect, maybe with good intentions,
hmm
but it often just adds to the stress, doesn't it? Instead of making things clearer, we end up spending so much time just taking stuff in.
And not enough time actually, you know, using it or
Understand.
creating our own thing from it.
Precisely. Which is why this whole idea we're exploring today is so relevant. We've looked at some really interesting material pointing to a solution, this concept of a second brain.
A second brain, okay?
Yes.
And it's not saying the stuff we consume is useless, right?
Not at all. It's often about the timing. Like, is that article you just read immediately useful? Probably not most of the time.
Makes sense.
But what if you could somehow save that insight, that quote, that idea for later, for when you actually need it?
So it's like sending information through time to your future self.
That's a great way to put it. You're actively capturing what matters, building this personal knowledge bank. So when that big project comes up or that tricky decision.
You've got resources ready to go based on what you already learned.
Exactly. And it all starts with just getting things down, in writing somewhere.
Okay, so this second brain idea.
Yeah.
It's rooted in something called personal knowledge management, PKM.
Yeah, PKM.
Mm,
The sources draw a really neat parallel, comparing it to how personal computers or personal finance tools totally changed things.
right, they empowered the individual.
Exactly. And PKM apparently really took off in the 90s. Think about university students suddenly dealing with online libraries. Just masses of information.
The digital fire hose, like they say.
Yeah.
They needed a way to cope.
Uh-huh. And it taps into this really basic human drive, doesn't it? Spend less time looking for stuff.
And more time actually doing the interesting creative work.
Yeah. There's this great analogy, use technology as a bicycle for the mind.
Oh, I like that.
Once you learn to ride, you can go so much further, faster. A second brain, used well, can kind of do that for your thinking. Amplify what you're capable of.
So let's nail it down. What is a second brain, practically speaking?
Okay, so the sources describe it as basically a digital archive for your valuable memories, your best ideas, key knowledge you've picked up.
Like a personal library in your pocket.
That's a good description they use, yeah.
Yeah.
Holding the stuff you might want later, so you're not just relying on your often unreliable biological memory.
I feel that. And there are other terms too, right?
Mm.
Like personal cloud, external brain.
Yeah, or Zettelkasten, digital Garten, lots of names floating around. But they all point to the same core need.
Which is,
A solid system to handle this information overload we're all facing, whether you're a student, an executive, anyone really.
everyone needs a way to manage the flow.
Right, because the potential payoff is huge. If you can master this flow, you can unlock, hidden strengths, creative ideas.
Get more done with less stress. That's the promise, isn't it?
That's the big idea, yeah. Have a reliable backup when your brain's overloaded, and something to push you forward when you're in the creative zone.
And this wasn't just like thought up in a vacuum, right? The sources mentioned a pretty personal origin story.
Yeah, deeply personal. It came out of a time of dealing with severe pain and significant memory loss. Digital notes became absolutely essential just to manage health information.
Wow. So it was born out of necessity.
Absolutely. And that experience really highlighted how powerful digital notes could be, not just text, but images, links, all sorts of files, like a really flexible external memory aid.
That makes the concept much more tangible. And it evolved from there.
It did. Apparently, later, during time in the Peace Corps, a similar note-taking system became crucial for teaching productivity skills. Then in the high-intensity environment of Silicon Valley.
The information pressure cooker.
Exactly. The need for a system became even more obvious. It seems like it was constantly refined based on real-world needs.
So it started personal, then became something shared.
That's what's interesting. It grew through conversations, workshops, then a blog. Eventually, the online course, Building a Second Brain, it clearly struck a chord.
It wasn't just about self-help anymore.
Right. It became about optimizing this external system to free up your internal mind for, the deeper thinking, the creativity.
And there's a historical angle too, isn't there? Commonplace books.
Yeah, the sources bring that up. People like Leonardo da Vinci, Virginia Woolf, During their own times of, well, relative information explosions, they use these notebooks.
Not just diaries, but active tools for learning and thinking.
Exactly, like analog precursors to what we can do digitally now.
So the second brain is like a modern, digital, commonplace book, a study notebook, journal, sketchbook, all rolled into one, adaptable for anything.
That's a perfect way to summarize it. And they contrast, Nina's Monday morning overwhelm
Feeling swamped, yeah.
versus someone using their second brain to prep for a meeting, pulling relevant notes, actually creating value right then and there. It shows the difference.
It really taps into that idea of the extended mind, amplified by tech.
The idea that tech can integrate with our biological brains, not replace them, but enhance them.
Like the Watson and Crick example, discovering DNA structure.
Right. Even brilliant minds like theirs used physical models, tangible things to help them think. Digital notes in a second brain can do something similar, make abstract ideas more concrete.
And you can link things in ways you couldn't physically, right? Text, images, audio.
Totally. Which leads to that Scrabble analogy they mentioned.
For generating ideas.
Yeah, you mix and match your notes like Scrabble tiles and see what unexpected connections pop up. It challenges that idea that you always have to start from a blank slate.
Instead of that constant heavy lift of trying to pull ideas out of thin air on demand.
Right. You let ideas incubate over time in your second brain, and being able to clearly articulate your perspective, backed by this organized knowledge, that's huge for your career, for anything, really.
Okay, so I'm sold on the why. But how? Where does someone start? It sounds like getting stuck on finding the perfect app is a bad idea.
Definitely a bad idea. That's a classic trap analysis paralysis. The advice is clear. Start with tools you already have and trust. Your basic notes app, whatever.
Don't wait for the mythical perfect tool. Just start capturing.
Exactly. Build the habit first. You can always switch tools later if you need to. The system is more important than the specific app.
And there's a framework for this, the code method.
Yes, code. Capture, organize, distill, express. It's presented as a roadmap through the information chaos, a modern take on that old commonplace book process.
Okay, let's break that down. First step, capture. What's the main idea?
Capture is about consciously choosing what resonates, paying attention to those moments of, ooh, that's interesting, or wow, or even just, huh.
That spark of curiosity or excitement.
Yeah, instead of just passive consumption, you actively notice what grabs you. You're training your intuition, essentially.
So it's selective. Not hoarding everything, but listening to that internal signal. And this actually helps with mental health. That seems counterintuitive.
It really does, surprisingly. By capturing what you value, you start letting go of that fear of forgetting things.
Ah, okay. Less pressure to hold everything in your head.
Exactly. You trust your system. It reduces that mental clutter and the anxiety that comes with it. You know the important stuff is safe.
Okay, captured something interesting. Next step in code is organize. How do we stop it from just becoming a digital mess?
The key principle here is save for actionability. It's tempting to build this massive, perfect folder structure from day one.
Yeah, I could see myself doing that.
But the sources advise against that. Organize around your active projects and goals. Ask yourself, how can this note help me move forward on this specific thing I'm working on right now?
So organize by project, like Q3 marketing plan, not by broad topic like marketing ideas.
Exactly. Much more dynamic and useful. But what about stuff that isn't for a specific project yet?
Good question.
That's where the PRA system comes in. Projects, areas, resources, archives.
Yeah.
Projects have clear outcomes and deadlines. Areas are ongoing responsibilities like finances or health, no fixed end date. Resources are topics you're interested in, like hobbies or learning. And archives is for inactive stuff.
So it's flexible. Things can move between these categories.
Precisely. It needs to adapt as your priorities change. A note might start in resources, then move to a project, then end up in archives.
Got it. Capture, organize,
Yeah.
then distill. What's that about? It sounds like more than just saving.
It absolutely is. Distill is about taking that raw captured info and making it yours, boiling it down, turning it into a concise, meaningful nugget. They call it quantum note-taking. Creating notes for your future self, even if you don't know exactly how you'll use them.
Pre-digesting the information. Why is that step so important?
Because communication, even with your future self, relies on clarity. The more distilled, the more impactful. Think about explaining something complex quickly. You don't just dump raw data.
No, you pull out the key points.
Exactly. Distillation is doing that for your own knowledge, making it potent and easy to grasp later.
Which brings us to progressive summarization. That sounds like a specific technique for this.
It is. It's a layered approach. Layer 1. just the raw excerpts you captured, the key sentences or paragraphs.
Okay.
Layer 2, you go back and bold the absolute main points within those excerpts, the core ideas.
Right.
Layer 3, you then go through the bolded parts and highlight or underline, whatever works, the very best bits, the absolute gems.
So each layer filters it down further, makes it super quick to scan later and remember the essence. The example with the online education article really showed that.
Yeah, the key stuff just pops out. And you can use this for meeting notes too. Pull out decisions, action items, crucial info. No more wading through pages of transcript.
It's about intentionally forgetting the less important stuff so the core message stands out, like a sculptor revealing the form.
Beautifully put. Picasso, Ken Burns. They talk about selective elimination. Same idea.
And presumably practicing this makes you a better communicator in general, more succinct.
Absolutely. It trains that muscle. And remember, all this effort is for future you, making your knowledge easy to find and instantly usable when the time comes.
Because you want to do the thinking before you're under pressure.
Ideally, yes.
Hmm.
Do the research, the distillation in advance. The sources even suggest trying progressive summarization on something you read recently, just to feel it out.
Good practical tip. And this applies beyond text too, conceptually.
For sure. Like a filmmaker editing footage or Octavia Butler curating her vast archives, it's all about selecting and refining to get to the essence. Her work, her pioneering Afrofuturism, surely drew strength from that deep well of distilled experience.
It really blows up that myth of the solitary genius, doesn't it?
Mm.
Creativity seems much more about gathering, organizing, refining.
Definitely. It's a process. Which brings us to the final stage of code, express.
Okay, express. This is about actually using the knowledge, right? Sharing it.
Yes, and crucially, sharing it earlier than you might think. Not waiting for perfection. Sharing smaller pieces, getting feedback, building momentum.
Through these intermediate packets or IPs.
Exactly. These smaller chunks of work in progress, your distilled notes, brainstorms, outlines, even single slides.
Like Lego bricks.
Perfect analogy. The more bricks you have, the more cool stuff you can build. IPs are the outputs of your thinking, and they're reusable. Think how much time that saves, not starting from scratch every single time.
Time and attention are scarce. Reusing work makes sense. The sources list different kinds of IPs, right?
Yeah, 5 types. Distilled notes, outtakes, stuff cut from previous projects, work in process, final deliverables, which can be broken down, and even useful documents others created, all potentially reusable.
And using these IPs means you can make progress even in short bursts of time, get feedback often, and maybe even build whole new projects just by combining existing pieces.
Absolutely. The example of planning a big conference by breaking it into reusable parts speaker bios, session blurbs, really makes that clear. Creativity loves examples and templates. Your second brain is that repository.
Okay, so we've built this thing. How do we find stuff again?
2 main ways. Searching, just using keywords, which is fast for specifics, and browsing, exploring your PRA folders, which is great for seeing connections and getting inspired.
And the value really starts showing up when you share things you've saved.
That's when it clicks for many people. You share a resonant quote or idea you captured earlier, and it sparks a conversation or helps someone else.
Which connects to the connect idea within Express, using your notes to tell a bigger story. Like that pastor using his notes for memorial services.
Such a powerful example, connecting themes, stories. Creativity isn't always invention. Sometimes it's connection, making sense of things for others.
And these smaller IPs are just easier to share, easier to collaborate on.
Definitely. More feedback loops, which can lead to identifying your cornerstone notes, those really valuable ideas that resonate widely.
It all ties into that everything is a remix idea, building on what's already out there.
Totally. Like Adam Savage using model kits. You start with existing parts. Borrowing ideas, citing sources that enhances your work, it doesn't diminish it.
And there's a psychological shift. Seeing your work as separate from you, as assets.
That's a key insight. Thinking in terms of reusable IPs, creating intellectual assets, not just doing one-off tasks, it boosts productivity massively over the long run. Every digital thing you create contributes to this evolving body of work.
And expressing your knowledge, turning it into action. That changes how you operate. More focused reading, better questions, seeking ways to share.
Big time. It creates this positive feedback loop. And expressing isn't just for writers or artists. It's about valuing your perspective in any context. A meeting, an email, a conversation. The sources give examples of small expression projects based on existing notes. Anyone can do it.
This leads into the whole creative process pattern, divergence and convergence.
Ah, yes. Fundamental. Divergence is opening up, exploring, gathering like Taylor Swift's notes or Twyla Tharp's project box, gathering inspiration.
And conversions is narrowing down, focusing, choosing a path, making decisions, discarding possibilities to arrive at the solution.
We see it everywhere, writing, design, engineering. The advice is to be conscious. Am I exploring now divergence or am I trying to finish convergence?
Because it's easy to slip back into research mode when you should be finishing.
So easy. Just one more article. Classic procrastination.
So how do we help ourselves converge? The sources offer strategies. First, the archipelago of ideas.
Yeah, start with a cluster of related notes or quotes your islands, and then build bridges between them. Find the themes, the connections, create that structure.
The outline is key here too, right? A dynamic framework linking back to detailed notes.
Exactly. Not a static Word doc, but an interactive map of your project within your second brain.
And the third strategy? Dial down the scope.
Crucial. Start smaller. Deliver a simpler version first. Get something out there. Like that fitness app example, launch with core features. Add more later.
And the second brain holds on to the ideas you cut, the scraps on the cutting room floor.
Perfect place for them. They might be useful for version 2 or a different project entirely. Dialing down scope applies to writing a book, planning a workshop, anything complex.
Your home remodel example, using Hemingway bridges and dialing down scope, shows it applies anywhere.
It really does. It highlights how order and creativity aren't opposites. Good organization creates the space for creativity, which brings in mise en place.
From professional kitchens, everything prepped and ready.
Exactly. Externalize the setup, automate the routine so you can focus on the cooking or the creative work.
Which leads to practical checklists. A project kickoff checklist.
Yep, 5 steps based on mise en place. Clarify the goal, brainstorm constraints, gather existing notes from your second brain, see what's missing, create a quick outline, a 20-30-minute first pass to see what you've already got.
And a project completion checklist.
Also 5 steps. Mark it done, reflect on the goal, review and move your intermediate packets to areas or resources, archive the project folder, maybe add a status note. A quick 10-15-minute wrap-up.
These checklists, plus a weekly review and noticing habits, they create a sustainable rhythm.
That's the idea. The weekly review keeps things aligned, process inboxes, review goals, projects, areas, reprioritize. Noticing habits are those small tweaks you make as you go. Keep it tidy.
And none of this needs to take ages. Quick, integrated habits, the system is forgiving.
Very forgiving. Which connects to the final big mindset shift, from scarcity to abundance.
Scarcity being that fear-based hoarding of information.
Yeah, gotta grab everything just in case. The abundance mindset is realizing valuable knowledge is everywhere. You don't need it all. You need to tune in to what resonates, what life keeps bringing up for you.
That sounds much less stressful.
It is. And when you operate from abundance, with a well-stocked second brain, sharing becomes natural. You want to share what you've learned.
Because knowledge grows when shared, right? It doesn't get used up.
Exactly. It fosters connection, sparks new ideas, and everyone has something unique to offer based on their perspective, their experiences.
Self-knowledge is key here too. The second brain helps you understand yourself better.
Definitely. It helps you articulate what you know and believe, and the world needs that unique knowledge. We just need to overcome the fear of sharing it. Even small ideas can make a difference.
The sources give examples of turning notes into small acts of expression to get started.
And it wraps up with 12 practical steps to begin, emphasizing just capturing what you value first. Don't overcomplicate it.
And the final advice.
Chase what excites you, and take notes along the way. Simple, powerful.
So wrapping this up, the core idea is transforming how we relate to information. Moving from feeling overwhelmed to feeling empowered, creative.
Right. This deep dive gave us the code framework. Capture, organize, distill, express as a practical way to do that.
Hopefully you listening have had some aha moments. Think about how these ideas could fit into your own life, your own goals.
Yeah, what's one small change you could make based on this?
And maybe a final thought to leave you with. How could building this personal knowledge system, the second brain, change not just your productivity, but maybe your understanding of yourself and what you can contribute?
Deep question. And if you want to go deeper into the how-to, definitely check out the Building a Second Brain resources. There's a lot more practical detail there.